Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to talk about how to put together a multiversal watch order for the MCU in preparation for movies like Deadpool and Wolverine, and of course Secret Wars, which will be here before you know it. So I'm going to talk about my recommended watch order, but honestly the best order is the one that brings you the most enjoyment. So maybe this video just gives you some ideas on how to put together your own watch order. Also, I did do a video on this very topic, over a year ago. Time flies, that's crazy. But there has been so much new information that we've learned about the multiverse that I thought it was worth re-upping this video and adding in all that new info. Also, to discuss a multiversal watch order, you do have to discuss some of the high-level concepts of the movies, but I promise to avoid any spoilers as best I can. So, with that in mind, let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have an April contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment. You could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have the membership option if you want to help me with my goal of doing this full-time one day. Members get cool perks like early releases of videos, which just seem to be very popular for members. But honestly, no matter how you support the channel, it's all greatly appreciated. Leaving comments, liking videos, and subscribing, those things go a long way too. So thank you so much. All right, so to discuss a multiversal watch order, we have to, at least at a high level, discuss how the multiverse itself is laid out. So I believe Loki's tree is Earth 616, i.e. the sacred timeline, and all of its direct branches. So basically the what if episodes. I think that is what comprises Loki's tree. Then we have to look at how his tree is situated in the greater multiverse. And I kind of divide it into three sections. The middle section is the through line of the Loki series. So Loki season 1, and then the loom falling apart, and then Loki season 2 ending with him building the tree, and then finally the void I think will stay around and end up being Battleworld during Secret Wars. On the top, we see all the other universes whenever they're kind of coming in and out of interactions with the main MCU. So Tobey, Andrew, 838, the X-Men, Deadpool and Wolverine, and of course Fantastic Four, and many more to come. And then on the bottom again is that Earth 616 sacred timeline. So keeping this in mind, that's how I'm putting together the multiversal watch orders. Okay, so I first want to talk about the binge watch order strategy. I'll admit it's not my preferred strategy because I kind of like an integrated approach more, but I know a lot of people like the binge strategy, so I want to talk about it first. So in this strategy, you watch all of the movies of a given series. So all of the X-Men movies, all of the Tobey movies, all of the Fantastic Four movies, including 2015, all of the Andrew movies, all of the Venomverse movies, yes, including Morbius, and maybe Madam Web if you decide to, all the Spider-Verse movies, and finally all the MCU. Now, overall, I don't really have an issue with this strategy. Other than maybe I like the variety of jumping in between the different series. But there's no continuity issues, I think. Other than maybe the Spider-Verse and the Venomverse movies, because they are so integrated around No Way Home, happening before, after, etc., that I think a binge of these movies prior to the MCU could be, just in a small way, problematic. So I'll talk about that in a moment. But let me know your thoughts. Do you personally like the binge watch order? And if so, let me know why you prefer it, and also if you do it in a different order, or if this is basically how you go about it. So anyway, I wanted to bring that up, but now I'm going to move to a more integrated approach and how I might recommend doing that. So first we'll talk about the Sony Spider-Man universes. And I did a video that entirely goes through this timeline, so I'm not going to cover it here, but you can check that one out if you want to know why I've arranged it like this. But I did add two things since that video. So one is Madam Web, good old Madam Web, all by itself over there in June of 2003. And then the Spider-Within short, which fits within the overall Spider-Verse, seemingly around Halloween in between the two movies. So I'm putting it in October of 2019. But again, you can check out my entire video on the Spider-Verse if you want to know how it all fits together. Okay, so when would I watch the Tobey movies? Well, if I was doing an integrated approach, then I would do it in and around Captain Marvel and Iron Man, because the Tobey movies are from 2002 to 2005, and then, of course, No Way Home. So why do I like this approach a little better? Well, I think that the movies are better if they're viewed in a relative position to the rest of the MCU. Granted, it's a different universe, I know that, but I kind of like them interweaving throughout the MCU. And a big reason for that is I think it adds depth to why Andrew and Tobey are so much older when they show up in No Way Home. Because, for example, here we see Spider-Man 3 in 2005, and it's not until 2024, 19 years later, that Tobey shows up. So I just think it adds that depth to how much they've aged in between the movies. Also, I think it helps, and in fact, I would recommend this no matter what your watch order. It helps to watch the Spider-Man movies, Tobey's and Andrew's, before watching Homecoming. Because the reason there's no origin in Homecoming is Feige assumed everybody already knew it. They've seen Tobey and Andrew's movies. So I kind of feel like if you don't watch those first, then you're missing out when you get to Homecoming. So when we get to Andrew's movies, they're pretty simple, right? They're just interspersed around the Winter Soldier. But the Venom and Spider-Verse movies, so here's why I think that a binge of these before the MCU could be a little tricky. So you notice right in the middle there is No Way Home. And notice it's in 2024. So I guess one thing that might stand out is what on earth? Everything else is 2018 to 2020. Well, that brings up an interesting point. Each universe may have a different present day. It doesn't have to, but it may. I mean, look at Spider-Man Noir, right? That's in the 30s, I guess. And then you have Spider-Man 2099. Well, he's from 2099, right? And Penny's universe is even farther in the future. So jumping in between different universes, they may end up in different present days, and that's okay. All right, so I'm trying to avoid any spoilers. So I think I'm doing it with this statement that the Morbius post-credit scene is likely due not to No Way Home, because that's never made any sense to me, but instead due to the Collider event in the Spider-Verse movie. So I do think it makes sense to watch Into the Spider-Verse and then Morbius. And then, of course, it'll be fully explained when you get to Across the Spider-Verse, because that's sure where they hint that the Collider event had much more to do with it than No Way Home. So let me know your thoughts on that, but I just think that makes so much sense. Then we have Venom 3, which hasn't come out yet, I know, and we'll know at the end of the year. But I just want to point out that that may give us a more definitive timeline for his appearances, because I think in Venom 3, I really want to know what date they put that in. If they make it more present day of 2024, let's say, or 2025, this is going to make this timeline very interesting. Then lastly, Across the Spider-Verse definitely should be viewed after No Way Home. I'm not going to go into why, it's a spoiler, but certainly it has some references to No Way Home. So that's why I think the binge watch order for Spider-Verse and Venom just doesn't work as well. I think these should be watched right around No Way Home. Okay, so now we move on to the X-Men timeline. I also did a video on this recently, so you can check that out if you want to know why there's, well, this pretty crazy looking timeline, good old X-Men. But I do want to point out something that was brought up by a few people in the video, which they said, dude, we think that Days of Future Past, the revised piece of that movie, and Logan are actually in the second timeline, not the third timeline. So in other words, they're up here. That is interesting. I'd never heard this suggested before. But they say it because Deadpool 2, and again, I'm trying to avoid any spoilers, references Logan. So that means Logan did happen in the original second timeline. And then likely the end of Deadpool 2, or, well, Cable in general, is what created a third timeline that did not include the Days of Future Past piece or Logan. Wow, that's fascinating, right? And then that opens the door for Deadpool and Wolverine showing up 5 years later, which they have mentioned that in some of the information coming out of CinemaCon, that it's 5 years after Deadpool 2. We got a clean slate. We go from Deadpool 2 to Deadpool 3. Wow. Let me know your thoughts on this. Again, I just had never heard this before. Now, one small concern I have is, does that mean that the Logan timeline or the Logan movie was erased? Because they've certainly implied that they don't want it, damaged by anything. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized, hey, in Deadpool 2, again, I'm trying to avoid spoilers, so I'm just going to say at a high level, he references the Wolverine Origins timeline. And he couldn't do that if the timeline didn't exist anymore. So maybe these timelines aren't rewritten. Fascinating. Anyway, let me know your thoughts on this. I really appreciate people that leave comments. I do read them all and respond to all of them. Really good stuff. Okay, so back to the multiversal watch order. I'm going to break this into three pieces. The original timeline, the revised timeline, and then Legion. Because Legion, as I discussed in my video on the timeline, it's totally separate. So you don't need to watch that really in any order whatsoever. Okay, so let's talk about when to watch the first timeline. So I'm going to break it into pieces a little bit here. I'm going to put the MCU around it, and of course you can see the MCU there. Okay, so very similar to how I approach the Tobey and Andrew movies, I like an integrated approach. And if you were to go that route, here are some of the advantages, I think. First of all, it gives a sense of time. between the X-Men movies. I mean, we go from 1962 all the way up to 2023. So by interspersing it like that, you really feel the time that's transpired. Also, I love having Endgame followed by Days of Future Past, which is essentially the X-Men's Endgame. I mean, what a good double billing, if you will, right? Watch Endgame and then watch Days of Future Past. Way cool. And then also, I'm going to avoid spoilers here, but it introduces you to Professor X and Quicksilver prior to Phase 4. I'm not going to say any more than that, but let's just say that you probably want to watch the X-Men movies before you would get to there. Which, again, with the binge order, you're fine, but I'm just letting you know on an integrated order standpoint, I think you should watch them before you enter into Phase 4. All right, so then let's talk about the second timeline, as well as Legion. So Legion, as I kind of implied, you can watch that whenever you want. I do not believe it's tied to any of the timelines, which is fine. It's a great series, by the way. Don't sleep on it. You should watch it, but I don't think it's tied to anything else. So the rest, as long as you watch it after Days of Future Past, but before Deadpool and Wolverine, you're fine. For my recommended order, I do have just kind of a binge right after Days of Future Past. So basically just, boom, watch everything. And then there will be some time before we get to Deadpool and Wolverine, obviously, in the timeline. Now, note that Logan is in the far future, 2029, but I definitely think it should be watched prior to Deadpool and Wolverine because it certainly seems like that movie is going to reference Logan. And then also, based on what people suggested in my X-Men timeline, I'm now thinking you should watch Deadpool 2 after Wolverine to avoid, I'm not going to go into details, but a spoiler. So I'm going to go there. We're going to go with that order, okay? So I think you would watch New Mutants, then Logan, then Deadpool 2, and then Deadpool and Wolverine. You got to love the X-Men timeline, right? You just got to love it. All right, so that's when I would watch those. Now, what about the rest of the multiverse movies? Well, we have all those too. And this is just the first page. There's 2 pages. So I think I have everything. If I'm missing anything, let me know because I want to have everything in this list. But here is everything basically from 1944 all the way up to 1998. And Blade there in 1998, that's kind of the beginning of, the new breed of movies, if you will. The new comic book movies being really good. So which of these do I recommend you watch before Secret Wars? Because I don't think you need to watch any of these before Deadpool and Wolverine. That's my guess, at least. So before Secret Wars, I would recommend trying to find the Nick Fury, David Hasselhoff movie, because I'm just betting David Hasselhoff is going to show up in Secret Wars. That would be such a David Hasselhoff thing to do. So yeah, if you can find this, great. But otherwise, just be aware he did play Nick Fury. And then I would recommend watching at least the first Blade movie, maybe all 3, because they're pretty good. But I can see Wesley Snipes showing up in Secret Wars. Then I was asked by a couple people, would you recommend watching Howard the Duck? I do think Howard the Duck will show up in Secret Wars because the dude shows up everywhere, right? I just don't think it's going to be this Howard the Duck, but you never know. I mean, only Kevin Feige would have the sense of humor to bring in that version of Howard the Duck. So watch it if you want to. He may show up. That version actually may show up. All right, so let's move to page 2. So now between the first page and this page, I do think I have everything. But again, if I'm missing something, let me know. So this is kind of the modern era of the superhero movies. What do I recommend here? Well, I actually think you should watch Daredevil and Elektra and the 2 Fantastic Four movies prior to Deadpool and Wolverine. Because these are Fox movies, and I really think anything produced by Fox has a good chance to show up in Deadpool and Wolverine. And in fact, they've just recently announced that Daredevil is going to show up in all regions. I know some people have it today, but in all regions on Disney+. So that kind of seems like a wink and a nod that you might want to check out the movie, right? Then, do I recommend watching the 2015 Fantastic Four? I could imagine Deadpool punking on the movie, right? I could totally see him doing that. So yeah, maybe watch it before Deadpool and Wolverine. It's not very good, but nonetheless, maybe worth checking out. All right, so then before Secret Wars, because I don't think the Ghost Rider will show up in Deadpool and Wolverine. I could be wrong, but I don't think so, because it's not a Fox movie. I could see Ghost Rider, though, totally showing up. Nick Cage in Secret Wars. So worth checking those out. I could also see Thomas Jane's Punisher showing up. And he was in a movie and then also in kind of a made-for-TV type movie. It might only be internet movie, but I think it's on YouTube. You can catch it, called Dirty Laundry. So I think those are worth checking out before Secret Wars. And then just because I love Moon Girl so much, I got to say watch it. I'm really hoping she shows up maybe in live action in Secret Wars. The rest of them, watch them if you want. no reason not to. They just may not show up in Secret Wars. So yeah, there you go. That is my recommended multiversal watch order. And in fact, if you want to see that watch order, you can go check out my Google timeline document, which is online. I will leave a pinned comment so you can go to it. Notice it's sorted by timeline, month, and year, and that is my recommended order because you know I love timeline order. And so this has all the movies that I've mentioned in this video in the order that I would recommend watching them. Of course, you can also sort, though, by release order. So you can go up to the sort and fire away there. And you can filter. So you can either create a temporary view or you can download it and filter away. And some of the categories involve MV or multiverse. And if you just, for example, filter by multiverse movie, then here you go. There's all those movies that I mentioned that are multiversal. So you can filter by Sony movies, Fox movies, you name it. It's all out there. Feel free to download it, check it out. And if you see anything wrong, let me know and I'll go ahead and fix it. So I really appreciate your help on that. Also, don't forget, we do have an April contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, and you might win a book or a steel book. And of course, there's that membership option if you're interested in that. And then I always love to mention the Discord. We have 1,300 members across the globe, conversations 24/7. It's so much fun. So some of the things we do are rewatches. We do MMORPG. We have Star Wars retrospectives going on. We have a thumbnail contest because we all know my thumbnails ain't that great. So you can help design the next thumbnail for my Moon Girl video coming up. And then also we talk mostly about Star Wars, DC, and Marvel, but we do have other media forums. So you name it and we can create it and chat away. So I will leave a pinned comment so you can get to the Discord server. And we'd love to have you be part of it. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.